Hey, everybody. What's going on? It's Degani right here talking to you at the Get Ready podcast. I hope you're ready for another episode. This one right here that we're about to bring up is we are going to go deep and, I mean, not really that deep, into the Ontario election that is coming up on June 7th, 2018. Blah, blah, blah. So here's the thing. I went out of my way and got my brother Snowhis to come on the episode, and we're going to talk a lot about the different parties. What do they have to present for for the Indigenous people of Canada? So we kind of get into all that, and we just generally go over all the ideas, what the parties have to offer, what do they give up, what are they going to promise to everybody, certain things like that. So we just go over the different parties, or different platforms, kind of explain how this election works. And remember, it is the provincial, it's not the federal. So we're not going over for the Prime Minister, we're going over the Premier of Ontario. All right, so I hope that gives us a little bit of content for this episode. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. So where do we begin? Because we're going to be talking, now we're going to get into the Ontario election, which is coming up this Thursday, June 7th. Everyone needs to go out and vote. But we're doing this episode just to talk about, most likely, if anything, just the parties that are involved and who should you vote for, what are their platforms, if any, and who should you be kind of looking into, in a sense. So I'm joined with
Snowhis Antone.
And like I said, we're going to be talking about the election coming up this Thursday. So let's get into it.
Okay, then, well, let's get the cliches out of the way. The story of this election has really been about Doug Ford bringing Trump-style populism to Ontario. There's a lot to unpack in that, and that's really what the Canadian mainstream media, that's how they've been kind of framing this. And while that's true to a certain extent, I'm just not a big fan of the way that's been laid out. I think what this election's really kind of mirrored is what happens when you have a third party, like Andrea Horwath, the NDP, and like a real third party too, not some make-believe liberal light nonsense. Like I look at this election, and I think the thing that comes to mind is what would have happened in America had Bernie Sanders ran as a third-party candidate. And you'd probably see something similar to this. He would have skyrocketed to the top. And it's kind of the same thing here. Like you kind of see that people hate Kathleen Wynne, and they're really kind of fed up with her government. And so, they want change. It's essentially what it is. And some people were thinking, well, I guess we got Doug Ford, but people casting critical eye at Doug Ford know how terrible he is, and how awful he is, and how his policies will essentially destroy Ontario. And so, at least on the surface, I mean, let's be honest, he doesn't even have a costed platform. I'm just keeping it real here, I'm just being honest. I don't mean to sound biased, but the reality is he doesn't even have proper costings. He's got a few numbers attached to his on his website, finally, saying, well, we expect this much to cost this much, but he just has a very vague, and we're gonna save $6 billion, but we're not gonna lose any jobs. And it's like, that's that's impossible. Like, what is he gonna stop buying? Like, what is the Ontario hospitals spending too much money on staplers or something, and he's gonna put an end to that? Like, it's stupid. And so then you have, on the other half, you have the NDP, who are running a really progressive social democratic platform, which is much more so than before. Like in the past, Horwath was trying to run a somewhat more centrist campaign to try to appeal to some conservative voters, and it kind of backfired on them, because then a lot of their progressive base strategically voted Liberal to keep Hudak out. And now we're seeing the exact opposite, where the NDP is unabashedly running a progressive platform, and the Liberals tried to do the same, and it backfired. And now they're at the bottom of the polls, and they've resorted to dirty tricks like union bashing and talking about the scary NDP, trying to like equate it with Doug Ford like it's going to be just as scary, and there's really no equivalency because the NDP actually does have a fully costed platform. And yes, there was a minor mistake, and but you know, I'd rather the politician, if they make a mistake, immediately correct it than say, "Oh, don't worry, we're going to find efficiencies." Like it it really doesn't like I don't know. I know I sound like a total shill and a biased individual to your audience, but there really is no comparison. I hate to say it.
Well, like
Everyone probably turned it off by this point, but no, well, look, here's the thing: we're gonna get into the specifics as it pertains to First Nations people.
Well, I was about to say that's the thing though, is you're talking about the three major parties, and now we are going to talk about the other parties that are there, because there's more than just. I think it's one good thing to say about Canada is it doesn't revolve around two parties that the media will try to play off as well. At least there's three to actually think about. Which, I mean, more options is always better than just two or one, but at the same time, I know what you're saying, that you're just getting, it's right now we're just getting out everything that people are seeing on TV, that they're constantly seeing all the time, that people, and that you'll see on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these stories and everything that builds up.
This is the background,
Yeah,
context, and then we're going to get into the real topic of discussion. Essentially, Doug Ford came in, swept in to power in his leadership race after Patrick Brown got kicked to the curb, and then he basically blew a 20-point lead. That's essentially what it was. And the reason why that happened, but you have to understand the reason why that happened, though. So people are trying to say it's because Doug Ford is so bad, but it's also because I think people are genuinely resonating with the NDP's platform. And I have issues with the platform, too. I don't want to sound like a total, everything they do is correct. You know, like, it's not necessarily true. You know, like, I certainly have some issues. But, I mean, speaking as First Nations people, which we are, speaking strictly from a First Nations perspective, I have no problem saying that this is one of the better platforms that I've ever seen a major political party do, is the NDP's platform. And so for us, it's good. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win. You know, like you've seen the polls dramatically climb up, which is not unprecedented because most people, they don't pay attention during the year. So that's why you can't necessarily say, well, it's guaranteed to election's going to go this way a year out, because when the campaign period starts, that's when people actually start paying attention. And when they start paying attention, that's when they start making their decisions, and then it could easily go from third to first place. Like, you know, like Trudeau, like he was in third place before the federal election last year.
Yeah.
And people were stunned by that. And I'm like, that's not unprecedented. Bob Rae was in third place in 1999. And then he meteorically rise to first place and ended up winning. Or was that 92? I think it was 92, sorry. I was a baby then anyway, so.
Well, you got the few Canadian history buffs going, come on!
Oh, yeah, I know. What is this? So, but yeah, so that's just the point of. So I'm not completely shocked that Horwath's NDP went from first place and now they're battling it out with Ford.
Yeah.
I mean, went from third place and then they're battling out in first place. But the thing you have to remember is that because the system, here's the one thing that a lot of people overlook. We have a system called Firstpastthepost. I'm not sure how much of your audience understands what that means. And what that means is each seat in the House is represented by a riding. And the constituents in that riding vote for the candidate. So in the past, even though you had parties, there was, like, you were supposed to choose based on the person representing you in that riding. Like, you don't just choose based on party loyalty. At least that's what the concept is supposed to be, and now that's totally not like that. Now people just vote based on whoever the leader is because of the way the media has become so involved in the democratic process. So that's the kind of system we have. So what you will see is you can see like the north, some city centers like Hamilton and Windsor get these huge number of votes for NDP candidates, and Andrea Horwath win the popular vote, but then Doug Ford still win the election because he wins more seats.
Yeah.
By narrowly winning in the 905 or Eastern, or in some of the more rural areas. So it's totally, even though Horwath is in the lead, it's totally possible for Doug Ford to still, because it's so close too, it's totally possible he can win without winning the popular vote just by virtue of winning the most seats. So keep that in mind when you're voting. And if you haven't heard about that, that's why I think it's worth, it can be fun too to check out the local debates and talk with your local candidate. The local candidate is supposed to be there for you. So if you try to talk with them and they're not interested in talking, then just don't vote for them. You know, that's another thing, because the local candidate is supposed to be there for you. We tried to talk to a local candidate. It totally ignored us. So
Yeah.
the hell with it, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we'll get to that.
But like to give you an instance, Peggy Sattler is the
London West.
yeah, as a representative in our riding.
Yeah.
I went right up to her and I just like let her have it because of my frustrations with the NDP over the past year.
Yeah.
And she just stood there. She listened to all of it, and talked to me about, well, this is how that we're doing this and this, and like trying to win me with the First Nations platform, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of person that, that's the kind of thing that you should expect. And I'll give you another example. The guy who was the Conservative representative in London West during the Harper years, he's a complete idiot, and. He was the Minister of Science, and when they tried to bring him onto science panels in Western University, he wouldn't show up. So like that's.
So is that a case of he just had no credentials for science at all, or was he just?
I don't know if he just didn't want to talk about it or whatever the deal was, but I think because they talked about climate change on the panel, and
so
the
probably
Conservative Party's anti-environment, or I want to say climate. They're climate change deniers, I guess.
Yeah.
How you want to phrase that? I don't want to sound like I'm railing on them too much in case you have any conservative listeners. I want to give them a fair deal. But they have to understand that the guy running in our riding, I don't want to, I'll say his name, Andrew Lawton, he said some incendiary things about immigrants and stuff. And so like.
Is he the one who, there were stories of him where he was asking children to debate whether the Holocaust actually happened? Is that the same guy?
Oh my! Is it? I think it might be.
I'm pretty sure.
Let's be fair. We don't know for sure.
No, I don't want to throw that out there.
We don't want to spear them in case they don't know for sure. So it's like, but he just doesn't seem like a good dude to me. Based on that, because the thing that got me mad was he blamed it on mental illness. That's never a good thing, because that almost kind of makes it seem like mental illness can make you racist. And there's a lot of people with mental health issues that aren't racist. So that's not a good thing. So anyways, but yeah, we're going off on tangents here. Just letting you know that's how the system works.
Yeah,
that's
like this is just a lowdown on how the writings of like voting for this person is going to lead into like the House.
And I know we're getting into basic elections 101 type of stuff, but I don't know how much your viewers pay attention to this stuff. So one thing I want to get into is how is this election different from the federal election, the one that elected Trudeau? Like I actually heard some people say like, oh, I'm voting against Trudeau this right now, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like this isn't this isn't an election. Trudeau has nothing to do with this. It's because it's a provincial election, so it's you're electing the representatives that handle the affairs in the province. So that would be Ontario in this case. It's just like how they have state elections in United States in each one, like in Michigan or Wisconsin or New York or whatever. They elect governors and state legislators and state senators. It's the same thing here. Like we have provincial representatives. They call it members of provincial parliament, I think, MPPs, that go to Queen's Park, which is the name of the provincial parliament in Toronto. And so And so that's what that is we're electing people who are supposed to handle the affairs that are exclusive to Ontario, and then the next federal election that Trudeau is involved in, that's not for another year and a half. And
Yeah, the federal.
yeah, that's the federal election, which is different. And I think these elections, like the provincial ones, like people are saying, well, that's like small potatoes. It doesn't. Who cares? Like the big thing was Harper. We had to stop Harper. Is what I hear a lot of people say. Or now it's probably going to be we have to stop Trudeau. Whatever the case is, like the provincial, because Canada is and I don't have the papers in front of me to really hammer home the difference. But Canada is a confederation of provinces. So because of that, the provincial governments have a lot more autonomy than you would expect. Like some people say some people don't realize how much of a difference they make in their lives. Sometimes some people argue even more so than the federal government, depending on what the policy measure is. So that's why sometimes these provincial elections could actually be more important in some cases. And a lot of people seem to overlook that. So that's why it's important you vote in this one for whoever you want. I'm not judging. If you feel like Doug Ford is the best choice, then have at it. Yeah, like, have at it. No one's shaming nothing. Like even if you, I think we should talk about this later. But like even if you're a supporter of the Green Party, for instance, and I have my qualms with them, and I'll let you know when we get into it. I'll let you know.
Yeah,
but
for
like some
sure.
people are saying, like you vote for the Green Party, it's a wasted vote. For instance, I don't believe in that nonsense at all. I think you vote for the representative who you feel best represents your views. Like I've always believed that, and I've always hated that. The liberals loved using that line for the last 20 years, that if you vote NDP or you vote Green or you vote whatever, you vote anything but liberal, you're secretly voting for the Conservatives, or it's like it's a vote towards them because you could have stopped them. Like that's the line they used about Tim Hudak in the last provincial election was, oh, you have to vote for Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals, otherwise Tim Hudak becomes the premier. And then before that it was John Tory, and before that it was that chick, and I forget that, and it sucks that I can't oh yeah, you're gonna have to let me read that.
Yeah, something to look at.
Yeah. So anyways, sorry. No one can see that.
Side note.
Yeah, no one can see that. Anyways, so like that's what they always use, that strategic voting line on third party or fringe party voters or whatever the case is. It's like you vote for them. You want Mike Harris? Like you're voting for, if you don't vote for Liberal, like the McGuinty Liberals, then it's a vote for Mike Harris. Like that's the crap that they used. And that's how they managed to stay in power for 15 years, is that kind of voter shaming. And you see that a lot in America with the Democrats and Republicans. There are only two parties in their mind, so it's like you can't vote for no one else, which is utter nonsense.
Is that kind of a weird strategy, though? Because that always seems very, not only talking down, but you're
confrontational.
Well, I mean, like you're treating the voters like children.
Yeah.
Where it almost feels like, what, you don't want your broccoli? You're not going to get ice cream if you don't get it. It feels the same when they're like, what, you don't want him? So you better not vote for this and this. Like when they use that kind of strategy, it always seems very like you're kind of you're talking down. And I know it works because there's so many people that fall into it. So I don't know where that easy.
It's funny because it's like it's free market capitalism. So it's like there's 50 different types of cereals, but only 2 political parties. I can't remember who said that. It might have been George Carlin. But anyways.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's what they've used. So I hate to say this, because I think this will show what my bias is to your viewers, and they might, and the hell with it. How sweet it is that the Liberals now are, it's clear that they're going down the tubes, because for years they used that stupid strategy. And now they're trying to say, oh no, please vote for us to stop Doug Ford from getting a majority. Instead he can have a minority and we can hold him to account. It's like, how would that? Like, stop them altogether and vote for the other party. If that's what they truly believed in. If they were principled, which they're not. The Liberals never were. I hate to say it because you probably got some Liberal voters. But just letting your audience know, that's for the First Nations people. that's just been the reality. Is the liberals have never really kept their promises. Rarely kept their promises.
Well, that's the biggest sin, right? Is I always remember at the very start of the federal election of the last one, when the big deal for the liberals, one of the big deals, of course, was the whole native part. And when they came in, they were of course like a lot of parties. But to me, for some reason, the last time the liberals did it with Trudeau coming in, they really went to town and really hammered home on, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this, and it's going as far as letting the actor, you know, because Justin Trudeau's a drama teacher, right? So he's an actor. Like, people forget that, and that he cried. He can cry when he needs to. He can do what he wants when he needs to, because he's trained to use his emotions. And that sounds very weird, but it's true. And anyways, they did that for like the missing and murdered women, the residential schools, and like, you know, we're almost at the end. We're getting near his 4th year of being in federal, of being a majority. There ain't nothing done.
They completely bungled the missing and murdered Indigenous, but that's a whole nother topic. I want to try to stay on the provincial election.
Yeah. So like, but then like,
but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but then leading down to these liberals with Kathleen Wynne, it's the same thing. It's like it trickles down the same thing. That it seems like they do follow a pattern. It's not like they're different from one another.
Well, I'll just say this: the Liberal Party through the last 150 years, when they weren't taking the vote away from First Nations people, which they actually did, by the way, when it came to First Nations issues, the Liberal Party has always been incremental. Like, it's always been like, oh, we only have so much money, we only have so much manpower and resources. Like, we'll get to you guys eventually, the First Nations people. We'll do a little bit here. We'll give you a little bit of money here. But then it's like, look, they can't build a pipeline, so they spent $4.5 billion just buying the pipeline. That's not even the constructing the add-on that they want to do. And $4.5 billion. So it's like they got the money to buy a pipeline, but they don't have money to ensure clean drinking water for every reserve. So I think that basically encapsulates the Liberal Party of Canada, because I think that's a reflection of literally every Liberal government or every Liberal party in the history of Canada at the federal or provincial level.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the one in BC, right? We're talking about. Is this for Kinder Morgan?
Yeah, that's the Kinder Morgan pipeline.
Yeah, for people who don't know, that's what recently happened with the Liberals. That they even showed it too. The statistics came up and they showed that, what is it, like 3.6 to fix all reserves of water in these areas where like it is damaged, where the water is, where you could boil it, vegetables, all the stuff. We get like to top with another $1 billion just to buy a pipe. It's like buying the body of a car, but there's no engine in there. There's no tires. Like, you're just basically buying the body, and then that's it for $4 billion or 4.6.
Yeah, it's a 65-year-old pipeline, and nobody's even going to see any profit from it except the corporation.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they're going to make all the money from that oil. The oil, the people who drilled that oil are the one making the money. So it's utter nonsense. So anyways, like we're going off on tangents here, and your viewers are probably like, these damn biased liberal haters, Doug Ford haters. But it's like, look,
why?
Look, like, you know, you just got to face the reality that okay, no, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get I'm just telling you like I did, like how I see it. What you should do is you should have a email address that you give to people at the end. Like, say, if you have any questions or comments, email me at the GetRready podcast.
Well, that's what it's for. I mean, if they want to send me, if anybody wants to send me an email after this, they can do it at the one I give at the end. It's always GetRready.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay then.
At GetReadyPodcast at gmail.com.
Okay then. So now let's continue on. So now we've set up essentially what this election.
Where we're at, what happened.
Yeah, where we're at, and what's happened. Like, let's get into the party platforms as it pertains to Indigenous people. Well, maybe this is something we can talk about.
Excuse me.
Maybe this is something that we can talk about. Is how many of your listeners would actually vote, you think?
Well, I'm hoping everyone that's listening gets an idea of what this is, and then they can explain to other people on the importance of voting, because, you know, whether we like it or not, we're in Canada. Like, there's a whole thing to it. So
Well,
I'm hoping a lot of them will actually go do it.
well, this would be kind of an interesting topic to talk to actually some of the older people or some of the no, like the traditional chiefs or the people on that. Like when it comes to voting, I hear the reason why they don't do it has something to do with like the way the treaties are worded or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that argument at all, and I don't buy it. And the reason is because just like to let people know, as a full disclosure, I am a traditional First Nations man. I do attend the Longhouse. I do practice I'm a spiritual person, and then people say like, well, then how could you vote in a white man's election? And look, here's the thing, the settler society, I guess we'll call them, they meddle in our affairs all the time. That's literally what they argue about in Ottawa. Why can't we meddle in their affairs? Like, let's look at it that way. And we do that through voting.
Yeah, of course.
I guess there's other ways that you could look at that. But just as a preface before we continue on and we start talking about the indigenous platforms, I think I don't have a problem with that at all. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the viewpoint I've always taken on it, and I've never really been convinced otherwise. I've heard a few people kind of explain to me why they shouldn't vote, and I just never bought it. Like, I never really bought any argument on it. Like, what's another one? Like the treaty thing. I think that's the closest to a decent argument I've heard made about it, where I was actually like, huh. Well, I mean that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's a interesting argument. But it's, I don't know. I find it weird that we obsess over the vote more than we obsess over drinking and drugs and, like some of the really heinous stuff that kind of goes on in our community.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like the act of voting, which is something that takes place like once every couple years. That somehow destroys and erodes our First Nations identity. First off, my First Nations identity takes a backseat to no one. I take a backseat to no one on that one, just let everyone know. But that kind of thing, I just never got why people obsess over that. It's such a dangerous, terrible thing to do. So we're kind of going off on tangents here. But,
yeah,
but I just think that's an important thing to note, because I know you're going to have some listeners that are even thinking, why are they talking about this? We shouldn't be voting. Bunch of idiots.
Straight up. Bunch of idiots.
And I'm just letting people know that like outside of the treaty argument, and you're going to have to have someone on who knows a bit better about that. That's that's the closest to a compelling argument I've ever heard, but I still just never really bought that. I just say let's meddle in their affairs since they meddle in ours.
Yeah, it's true. Like I said, I agree with that too. Like, I would rather
maybe we'll talk more about this next week's episode when we do the what I'm talking about.
A different kind of episode, yeah.
Yeah. We'll find. We'll
be like, was it same shit, different story?
Yeah.
Kind of a. I know what you mean. I mean, I get it. I understand it. I know what it is. But honestly, I've never felt a compelling argument. Like, I never heard one about why we shouldn't vote. I've never heard one. And like I said, I think this is for a bigger discussion in itself. And I would honestly, here's the deal. Whoever's listening, I would like to have anybody on that wants to go on talk about this subject. Or if you have, like I said, if this is somewhat maybe getting you mad or something, you can always email me, and then send these questions, and I can like read them on or whatever like that, and talk, and like then you can be heard if you don't want to be on the podcast, but you want to send a question. That's the thing, because politics is a very
divisive.
Yes, it's so much. So like that's why it's always important that
You probably
Don't-
lost some of your fan base for even
Well-
for having me on talking about Trudeau and Ford.
Well, what I mean is like don't be that kind of person that gets mad at home. The whole point of something, even like the whole point of this, is to like voice your opinion.
Yes,
That's-
engage.
That's why I'd ask anybody to come on the podcast, not to just talk about politics, but to talk about anything. But like this is like that's why like even now I'm telling people like voice your opinion. If you don't like something we're talking about, then send me an email. I'm not mad. I'm not gonna be mad about it. Like that's just how I am. I just would rather have somebody on to talk to about the issue and talk it over and everything like that because I love to hear more people's opinions. But like as it comes to this, we're just talking about the election. And I mean, some of this stuff maybe people won't believe. Maybe some of the stuff they will. But in the end, you know, this is how it is. We're just talking about what's people are what we know. So
Yeah, like totally, I totally agree.
Tola.
I totally agree. So, with that little asterisk out of the way,
Yeah.
even though I know that's probably an episode worthy topic, period, because it would be interesting to collect the evidence for and against and really think about it, like not just dismiss those people who do have concerns. Let me just say that to anybody listening. I don't dismiss your concerns about, well, should we, shouldn't we? Like I said, I have heard a somewhat compelling argument, the closest to one.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not dismissing any of those concerns,
No, not at all.
and it would be interesting to hear the opposite of that. But we voted before. Like I voted before. I'm telling people that, like letting people
Yeah,
know
and
that.
I voted before too.
And that's just the kind of stance I've taken is, we should, that's your participation. I think ultimately does make a difference. But you have to keep participating to make sure that difference maintains. And maybe we'll talk more about that in a future episode.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, though, let's get into the parties. I like this because we're not just going to talk about the 4 main parties, arguably 3 main parties. But we're going to be talking into what's referred to as fringe parties. I'm not a big fan of that term because that makes it seem like the crazies, but that's what the media. That's the language that the media uses.
Yeah.
But there is like something like 3 dozen parties running, but it goes to what I said earlier about this system is first past the post. So it's totally the party. It's dependent on the party to make sure that they have someone running in your riding, your district, that is endorsed by that party. So, for instance, there's 123 districts in Ontario across that's split up. So, and you got the Conservatives, Liberals, and the NDPs and the Greens that all have people running, and then after that, the Libertarian Party has 117 people. So they're the closest. So technically, they would be the 5th party. And then you got a couple dozen, I think at least a dozen or so more parties, and they have sometimes 12, sometimes 2, sometimes they have 50 running, sometimes they only have 30 running, but they're choosing to make a political stand under that banner. So let's talk about the main party. So the Conservatives, they're let's start with them, since let's say them and NDP are tied, or Doug Ford or the Conservatives are in the lead if they win enough, if they're poised to win more seats than the other.
Yeah.
We don't really know. Because let me just put this as an aside, and this is probably something we should have talked about in the introduction. Kathleen Wynne conceded.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she said, there's no way I'm going to be premier. And
oh, hey, that's right. That's
yeah,
why she's asking people to vote and make sure they're a minority.
Yeah, and that's what she's saying. But the polls I've seen so far, there haven't been any conducted since that. And the latest one, about 50% of the people that were planning to vote Liberal still thought that she could pull it out, she could still win, and that was before she conceded. So they're saying, I wonder how much of that goes down. because there was a good portion of liberal supporters who their second choice would be the NDP. So it makes you wonder if they will, in the end, strategically vote for the NDP, or if they'll stick to their guns and remain with the Liberal Party. But we'll discuss that. But I guess we've already touched upon that. So anyways,
Yeah.
I think the Conservatives. So the Conservatives, one of the big long-running themes of or criticisms of Doug Ford has been that they haven't released a real platform. They've had a bunch of vague promises and that kind of thing, but they've never really had any real thorough costings. They've since released something resembling a platform. It's mostly just, this is what we'd like to do, and it has like a price tag next to it, but it's not really giving any kind of indication of how it'll all be balanced in the end, because they still promise to give tax cuts to everybody, which costs money, because then you remove that from your revenue stream.
Yeah.
In your financial budget. And they promise no one's going to get fired, and I'm pretty sure wages are the highest or the most expensive part of running government. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not being sarcastic, but I'm pretty sure. I think I've heard that from someplace. And if that's the case, Doug Ford is promising that not a single person is going to be cut. And if that's the truth, then where are you going to cut the money from? Like I said, are you going to like stop buying like newsletter paper or something like that? And do they really buy that much that you're going to save $6 billion by saving money on paper clips or something? It's really it's hard to know exactly like what they're going to do, because they got the tax cuts, they got that, and then they got a lot of other promises too, like concerning hospital beds, money for autism care, healthcare, mental health care.
Yeah.
And they're promising a bunch of stuff like that, but it doesn't really have a kind of they're tight-lipped about what exactly their budget is going to look like. But there was several prominent economists who tallied up all of the promises that Doug Ford has made since the start of the campaign, and they say that his budget would be the most expensive. Like there'd be a $2 billion deficit, or maybe more. I think I've heard 12 billion, but I was like, that can't be real. I should have looked up my notes before we started. But I think it was something. It was the most expensive though, like a 12 billion, maybe to 2 billion, some numbers. But the Conservatives, they've had a history, and even Ford, his talk about making efficiencies and that kind of thing, and cutting $2 billion from government, that that kind of goes in with the conservative ideology of being fiscally responsible. And what that means is not spending too much government money, and making sure that you balance the books so you don't incur more government debt.
Yeah.
With your spending promises, and Doug Ford's promises seem to kind of go against that. So that's essentially the concern. And as it pertains to First Nations, they don't have nothing. I don't even think they use the term First Nations once on their website. Like I looked it up. I looked it up, and they didn't have it listed once on there. Like it's like at least Patrick Brown was like, our party's for everybody. I don't even think Doug Ford is pretending anymore. And so it's not very good for us.
No, it isn't.
It's not very good for us. But okay, let me be fair though. Let me be fair when it comes to the Conservatives. And this is going to be something we're going to probably reference throughout this episode. I saw that graph that you were telling me about in Brantford and Brant, just to give people a bit of a, but they might have seen this. You might have some listeners who've seen this.
Yeah.
In Two Road Times, the Six Nations newspaper, Six Nations, the reserve is located in what's known as the Brantford Brant riding. And so then what they did is they reached out to the 6 candidates that are running in that riding, which was NDP, Liberal, Conservative, Green, Libertarian, and none of the above. And we're going to talk about those other two parties later. And we're probably going to reference this document throughout the episode, because I think it does kind of touch upon what the thought process behind the parties and what they think as it pertains to First Nations issues. At least the parties that don't even actually have anything on their on their website. And so then they
So what was the sixth one?
None of the above.
Oh. Okay.
So, anyways, so the Conservative Party, the guy that was on the Conservative Party, at the very least, when they asked him what's the biggest issue facing First Nations people today that you think the previous government failed on, he at least said, "Oh, the clean water. Like it's awful that there are places in Canada that don't have clean water." He's something like that. He talked very much about how, you know, like there shouldn't be any boil water advisories in any First Nations community in Ontario. And I was like, yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, that's true. You know, so I have to give props to that. He at least knows that much. But when they asked him, like, which of the 94 resolutions in the TRC would you implement, he was like, I don't know any. So yeah, but that aside, he at least like acknowledged the water thing. But whether or not Doug Ford would do that, who knows? Probably not, because that's gonna cost too much money, and you gotta spend money on tax cuts. So who knows? Like, okay. Like, people are probably like mad, but let me just say this: Doug Ford does not have a history of helping First Nations people. So excuse me for being a little skeptical, just because one of his soldiers had the decency to acknowledge that we don't have clean drinking water. So just putting that out there, you know.
Well, doesn't that feel like it's gonna be weird to say at this point, but isn't it kind of like coming across a soldier of an army and they're saying, "Don't worry, we won't bomb you," but he's like a private. And it's like, well, that's not up to you. Yeah. It's like, it's not up to you, man. You gotta talk to the general.
Yeah. So that's the Conservatives. Let's mark them off.
Okay,
them.
So,
and then let's go to the Liberal, or should we do the NDP since they're the second in the polls?
Yeah, let's go with them. Just do some poll writing.
Okay, then. So the NDP, because here's the one thing that people probably expect is that the NDP has a large First Nations voting bloc.
Yeah.
And they do turn out for the NDP. Not well, we just talked about, do they vote or do they not vote? You know, do we not vote? That the ones who do vote typically vote NDP. I think that's fair to. That shouldn't be surprising to people. Like, you might have some liberal or conservative viewers, but it really shouldn't be that surprising. Because, like, I'll give you an example. In the federal election last year, they did a breakdown. Like after Trudeau won, they tried to make the narrative, like, they tried to make us like the Canadian Mexicans, like the I shouldn't call them Mexicans, the Latino vote. The Latino vote, they tried to say that that's what swung it for Obama in 2008.
Yeah.
So they tried to do that narrative in 2015, saying, "Oh, it was the First Nations vote that swung it for Trudeau." I hate to tell you, people, that's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. The media tried to play that, but they never actually had any real hard concrete data. And then they did a complete voting audit or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they do something like that after every election, where they break it down by demographic, who voted for what specifically. And every group that typically votes NDP, including unions, workers, and those type of people, minority groups, whatever, whoever you think is your typical NDP voter, environmentalists, they all went over to the Liberals to strategically stop Harper. But the First Nations vote was the only one where the majority, and by majority I mean 50% plus, but it was a higher level, it was a higher turnout than that. The majority still voted for the NDP under Mulcair. Like, they didn't strategically vote Liberal; they still came out for the NDP. So that stuff about how we helped Trudeau, that's nonsense. I'm so happy that's nonsense, because Trudeau's That's a whole nother thing. But so that's just gonna say. So it shouldn't surprise your listeners that the people who do vote typically vote NDP. Not saying that there isn't liberal or conservative or other party, Green Party, whatever voters that are First Nations. Of course there is. You know, we're a wide group of people with differing opinions. So it's standard reason that you would find First Nations, conservatives, liberals, Greens, none of the above, maybe. so, but with us, the typical voting bloc is the NDP, and I'm just keeping it real. I'm just being honest here. If you look at the actual NDP platform, like you're gonna see them have a very thorough. They're gonna have a very thorough platform. First Nations platform. You know, like they're gonna say like, well, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and let me make a statement right here because the question that commonly gets asked, and it's usually by older, long time, or more jaded First Nations people, you know, the ones who don't typically vote or see it as a pointless exercise.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that cynicism, so I'm not finger wagging or I'm not talking down to those people who are like, oh, but they never keep those politicians, they'll say all the perfect stuff and they never keep their promises. They'll of course they're going to say that. Of course they're going to promise this and promise that. And that's why you're supposed to hold them to account. Just like I said earlier, but I went right up to Peggy Saller and said, what the hell are you guys doing? Like I really took it to her. And I think a lot of First Nations people need to, the ones who are involved in some way politically, they do need to make sure they hold, like you can't be a party hack is what I want to say. I would challenge New Democrats, longtime New Democrats, people who were
doing it for years, or
and they and I would challenge them. Well, what about this? What about this? And they would try to argue back, like saying, "Oh, well, the party has to do it for this reason," and I just bring it right back at them. Like you can't. You have to challenge them essentially. That's the point of being in a democracy.
Well, isn't it? I mean, I think the best way to say it is, like when you you can't be mad if you don't hold them accountable, like the people you vote in, because in reality they're supposed to be working for you.
Exactly.
You're not working for them. That's why you should be able to say something to them if you can, and if they don't have an answer, don't vote them in next time.
Exactly. That's why Obama got away with so much garbage in the United States, because that's the one thing I would commonly hear from liberals during the 2016 election was, "Oh, I voted Obama and then I just ignored politics." So they didn't see any of the really horrible stuff that he did.
I think the best thing to say about
and they still don't believe it actually.
I think the best thing about politicians you could say about them is they're not those old-fashioned machines from the 90s. You don't set them and forget them.
Yeah, exactly.
You stay on it the whole time.
Yeah, you're supposed to be conscious of this. You're supposed to be constantly talking about it. But look at so anyways, getting off topic. So and I just want to say this, make this point too about holding politicians to account. It's better. It's better that you fight them. No, what's that old phrase? This is an old saying. You have to fight for the entire loaf of bread, and then if you only get half a loaf, that's not so bad. But if you only fight for slices, then you're lucky if you get crumbs.
Oh, snap.
And that's essentially what with the NDP platform. I'm like, look at Indigenous people were involved in the party, and you just look at this platform and it's robust. I'm going to go over some of them here.
Yeah, go for it.
True government-to-government relations with Ontario First Nations. We will work with First Nations leaders to sign a cooperative government-to-government accord. I like that because that's not just vagaries. It's actually like they will actually sign a law that they have to uphold. That's what that is. Implement the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, moving first on the recommendations related specifically to provincial jurisdiction. That's something that they could honestly back out of, like the Liberal government, because that's what the Liberal government said they're going to do, and then they went to the AFN and were like, sorry, we're not going to do that. So, so I'm not. So like that's something that they could betray us on. So that's why you got to hold them to account.
Yeah.
Replace the
yeah.
Far North Act. We will work with First Nations leaders on the appropriate replacement to the act. Revenue sharing. Andrea Horwath will transfer the province's share of mining taxes to Ontario's First Nations, working with First Nations leadership. Now, I like that because that actually is concrete resources that go into the community. But what I'm more interested in, and we talked about this before, is actual real investment in First Nations communities, not just throwing money at communities and telling us to fight for it like a bunch of hungry dogs over meat and we start killing each other. I would rather see them say, well, we're gonna take the money and we're gonna invest it in green technology that will exclusively turn First Nations communities green, like actually investing the technology and the engineers and the workers and that kind of thing.
Yep.
To making First Nations communities better. But I think that's another topic for another day. Is that sort of thing. But that's a good thing though. Like putting aside my opinion on that, the idea of revenue sharing, that's the way it should be, because that's most of those mines and things were owned by First Nations people.
True. Yeah.
Or at least those resources. Better healthcare for First Nations and Indigenous people. And Andrea Horwath government will provide better healthcare services in partnership with the First Nations in every community. I think that's kind of a problem that's happening throughout the country, is the sort of rural hospitals are kind of being underfunded, it seems like to me.
Yeah, because they're not in a bigger city, right? They think they don't need as much because they're in a smaller area.
They're only servicing so many people, but it's like
that's what they think.
That's what causes urbanization. All the people leaving the rural areas for the cities, and that causes more homelessness necessarily. It causes its own kind of problems. Affordable electricity in First Nations communities. We will exempt First Nations communities from electricity delivery charges and connect remote communities to Ontario's grid.
That's what that sounds like.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is,
sounds like good stuff there.
I remember growing up, it's like if a thunderstorm was coming, your power's gonna go out. Like that's just
So it's like
that's a fact of life.
It's one of those. Well, if you're playing a game, better stop. If you're watching a movie, you better remember where it's gonna go off if the hydro does go off.
That's why when there's a storm in the city, it feels weird not
for the hydro to flash 60
to
times in an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why
it's true.
It's like that would put an end to that. So a lot of good stuff here, I think. Like
and this is all just from the NDP.
This is just the NDP. This is just the NDP. So
and our prayer.
It's so so for some of your liberal conservative listeners, just if they're still here, they might have shut it off in anger and unsubscribed to your podcast. But
I hope they at least send an angry email so I can read it.
So for those people, you can kind of see why First Nations people go for the NDP, because they kind of do that. But just let me preface that by saying that doesn't mean First Nations people are impervious to betrayal from the NDP, because it's probably another topic. But Horgan in BC NDP, how they built Site C and just told NDP people, Indigenous people, oh sorry, you were gonna get screwed anyway someday. It might as well be from us. That almost made me quit. That made me hate the party full on as a whole, not just the BC NDP, but
all of it. Yeah.
That's the kind of crap that creates cynicism in politics, where you there's so many people that are probably like, well, it serves you right for trusting them, It's but it's that's why you do have to hold them to account, and you do have to punish these politicians when they that's right when they don't deliver. So we're gonna try to talk about the Liberal Party, but I think my phone died.
Oh,
crud!
Your notes.
What the frig?
Well, Liberals.
Well, that's why I don't want to be unfair, because the Liberals do actually have a platform that's somewhat similar. No, I think my phone is completely dead now.
Sounds funny.
It's not even letting me. What the hell is this?
Like, ladies and gentlemen, we're expecting technical difficulties.
Experiencing.
Shut up.
Should we go in the other room?
I don't know here.
Because I want to give the liberal. Okay then. I want to give the liberals a fair shake.
Fair shake of the shaker protein cup.
Yeah, like.
It's like we're not just spiking the protein like some companies. We actually got the real stuff here.
Oh, your phone's way better than mine.
Got that third-party testing. Well, I think it's just newer, that's all.
Ooh.
Can't leave people with it. Ooh. And then you just walk away.
I clicked on the federal one. So here it is. Okay, here it is. Now this one is specific to indigenous people.
Okay.
Okay, Doug Ford's conservatives have no plan for reconciliation with indigenous people. That's pretty, they put that right on their platform. Okay then. Okay then. The reconciliation journey. We are committed to reconciliation between indigenous and non-indigenous people. Nothing really talking about signing a formal accord. But, you know, it's better than nothing. You know, like pandering is better than not pandering. Supporting indigenous children and youth. Indigenous children and youth benefit from improved access to mental health supports, coordinated services, better health care and child care. I mean, I guess that's something, you know. Like
better than nothing.
Well, I'm not saying it. The way it's worded almost feels like we're improving mental health and healthcare services for everyone. You know, indigenous people benefit from that too, which isn't too bad. You know, it's promoting.
You're all getting a raise. Yeah. That includes you indigenous over there. Yeah. I'm just like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, so promoting economic development, infrastructure investments, and training create economic growth and jobs for indigenous people. See, like that doesn't even. That sounds like our infrastructure and investments plan on training create economic growth for it. Like, yeah, you can say that, but that doesn't really sound like specifically to us. You know, that just sounds like, well, we're doing it for everybody. And that's easy to say, but a fair justice system, improved delivery and quality of justice for indigenous peoples. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. They have it here. We're developing an integrated strategy to help divert vulnerable people away from the justice system through early intervention. There's okay, so they do have they establish a bicultural community justice center. Okay, so this is actually pretty good. You know, this fair justice system. They actually do have some details here, and if you're interested in that, look it up on their official. I mean, not that they're gonna win, but but like at least like if you're interested, or if you're a liberal supporter. It's I gotta give them, you know, props for that.
Yeah,
you know?
Of course.
Supporting strong and healthy indigenous communities. Again, that seems a little.
Don't know. They haven't done it the last few years.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Where have they been over the last 15 years?
Yeah. So I don't know about that.
So then, but look at overall though. It's like at least it's something, right? At least it's something. I remember, like, hearing that like the difference explained to me. Oh, what are you looking at?
Oh no, I just saw their thing that just says care over cuts, and I was like, well, you're just doing that now?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of been always been their MO. So, anyways, so that I like that justice part of their platform and the Liberal Party. So, but that's kind of the liberal. That's basically the liberals. Like they've had 15 years to implement a lot of that stuff. I think I'm certain, because I was too young to really remember how awful the Mike Harris days were. I'm certain that McGuinty and the Wynne Liberals improved things compared to those nightmarish Harris days. But you know, like it's like it shouldn't just be like what we talked about earlier. This sort of pitter patter politics of a little bit at a time, a little bit here, and then they spend all this money on something else. So. You know, good for them, but you know, it's not enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Not especially at this time.
Right.
So then, let's move on to the other parties now. So now, oh, the Greens. That's what it is. The Greens.
Ah, the Green Party.
And I gotta be honest.
Seaweed.
I gotta be honest.
Yeah.
I wasn't too pressed with the Greens.
Uh-huh.
I think it's like if you talk to individual Greens, they're they do have somewhat of an understanding of First Nations issues, and they do want to move forward on those issues, tackling those issues. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find their Indigenous platform. But you know what? I was looking. But you know what? I was looking at their platform before, and I wasn't really impressed. Yeah. Looking here, there's nothing here specific to First Nations people. Now, I guess this is something that we didn't cover that was in the conservative NDP and liberal thing. Would you say fighting for environmental issues is a part of Indigenous issues?
Yeah, I think it could most likely be.
Because if that's the case, then the NDPs or the conservatives are even worse because they're not going to do anything about it. NDP's got a pretty. They actually got the highest rating of the major parties.
Yeah.
They from an environmental study, and I wish I had that study right in front of me. But they had looked at their platform and they gave them like a B plus or something for saying that it ticks off a lot of boxes that the environmental justice groups would want, and while the liberals not so much. You know, they're doing okay, but not so much. And whereas the Greens, they have obviously they have a huge, robust environmental platform, wanting to say we're gonna invest tons of money, go completely green, and then we're going to change the economy in that way, in a completely green tech economy, which I totally agree with. I think that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They also have a basic income as part of their platform, which you think would benefit First Nations people, especially the unemployed First Nations people, the ones who work the really low income jobs, which is what most First Nations people, where we find ourselves typically.
Yeah.
On the lower end of the economic spectrum. And if that's the case, then a basic income would help. But I got to be honest, and this is what I alluded to this earlier when it comes to the Green Party. I never really bought them. You could probably do a whole platform on basic income, but I think basic income is nonsense, and it's a fraud, and it's just a cheap way to put duct tape on a broken system.
Some of that duct tape life.
Yeah, I don't doubt that it would help people, but I wonder how much damage it would do long term to social services, and how much would it empower the capitalist class, like the people who own all the businesses and everything like that, and versus the consumers.
Yeah.
The people with that have their money. So it's just there's a lot more to it than that, but it's just like we're talking about Ontario election. But I've just never been. I don't know. I used to kind of be like, ooh, basic income sounds nice, but now I'm kind of like, I can see why it has it's full of holes. It's Swiss cheese policy.
Swiss cheese.
And so then with the Green Party, the thing that I find a little strange, they seem like environmentally conscious liberals, and by that I mean they still believe that you can completely go environmentally safe and still have capitalism. So what looking at their platform, it's like we're gonna have all this green technology and we're gonna go 100% environmentally sound, and they don't really make a distinction of whether or not that means they're gonna give a lot of money to corporations and tell them to go green, or whether they're gonna make a crown corporation that's publicly funded, and that's going to be the one that transitions the entire economy into green.
Yeah.
And it seems more like the former, because their argument is, well, that infrastructure is already built. It's like, well, that infrastructure has the it has the motive of money, of making money, and that seems antithetical to me to wanting to protect the environment, because that's what they tell you over and over again is, oh, we can't choose between the environment and the economy. These same people, yet these same people want all this money to go green. So, you know, if they have a motive of making money, then it's like, why are we giving them all kinds of money to go green? You know, like the Green Party, and not to mention the Green Party is very pro small business. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people who own small businesses, but that doesn't seem pro worker to me. And I think it's difficult to be both, but that's a whole nother topic, I suppose. So that's why, like, I was always like, and let me just preface this: people who vote green and people who are green, like, I talk with some other people, some of the other people I talk to politics about, they'll be like, those crazy greens, the kooky greens, all those greens, they think they could be pro-business and pro-environment, and I'm not like that mean to the greens. I think deep down, the greens mean well. You know, that's why they vote for them all the time, even though they rarely win.
Do they have any kind of seat in the House, like, at all?
Not right now, but I will say this: if you have any listeners in Guelph, I don't know if you do. If you do, though, if you let's hope you have listeners in Guelph. If you do, that Mike Schreiner, the guy who's the party leader, that's the seat he's running in, and he actually is pulling ahead. It's narrow, but he actually does have a chance at winning Guelph. That's, you know, like, don't be afraid to vote for him. You know, in the spirit of democracy, I'll say that. Like, don't be afraid to vote green in that riding, because they actually do have a chance. But as of now, there is no greens in Queen's Park. You know, there's greens in different provincial legislation, in different governments provincially across the country, but not in Ontario. So that's why I would say that about Greens. I think deep down, the Greens are good people, is what I wanted to say, even if their policies are a little strange.
Yeah. Okay.
Not the environmental part.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
So
then the next is the Libertarian Party. That's the fifth biggest party, and the idea of the Libertarian Party is that they're anti-government, pro-consumer, pro-freedom. So what that means is they want as little government as possible. This is kind of the libertarian mindset. Let's put it this way. Like Ontario Hydro, for instance, they would rather have Ontario Hydro be 100% privatized instead of publicly owned. You know, like, which is what the NDP wants to do. They want to bring back hydro back into public ownership.
Yeah.
Whereas the Libertarian Party would rather it be in 100% private ownership. But in their mind, they think that there's going to be a rival Ontario Hydro that will come up, and then the two will be competing with each other over who has the best hydro prices, and you get to choose between them, and then that'll make the hydro function better. That'll make the prices go down everywhere, and we'll all live in this happy paradise where everyone's free.
So they would only hope that another Hydro One comes around.
No. It's not a hope. It's a fact that the free market will correct everything.
So the whole entire thing about libertarian, I don't know anything about them. I'm not gonna lie to anybody that's listening. I don't know anything about Libertarian Party, so I just want to say that. So their whole idea is the fact that goes with everything, right? Like that's not just Hydro One, but that's with like
that corporations and the free and competing against each other in the free market will correct and make the society much more prosperous.
So wouldn't they just learn from now? Because it wasn't Hydro One just actually privatized like the last?
Well, it's not privatized all the way, and there'll be a rival that'll show up if it is 100% privatized, and that'll give people choice. And I don't know. I know it's weird. It's wacky. It's here's the thing with libertarians. Here's the thing. I will say this. I gotta say this. Like, the thing they always say about libertarians is you typically will agree with them 50% of the time on issues because they believe in freedom. Like, that's the whole cornerstone of libertarianism.
Yeah.
Is freedom. So what that means is civil liberties.
Okay.
For instance, they don't want government spying on you like they currently are.
Yeah.
They don't want.
It's a fact.
It is. It totally is.
Yeah.
It's Bill C-51, and the other one is
Check it, people.
weed. Like it should be up to you what you put in your body. And people are like, well, what about crack cocaine? The libertarians will be like, yes, because freedom. And, but like, I don't completely disagree with that though. Like I always found I always, this is going to be somewhat controversial. I do think it should be up to the individual in terms of what you put in your body. I guess I can see there being problems with that, but that's what I mean. Like the libertarians, they believe in legalizing weed and you know like the government shouldn't tell you what you're allowed to do with your body, kind of. So then like libertarians normally, I don't say they always are, but they normally are like pro-abortion and women's rights and that kind of stuff because it's like what you do with your own body is your own business.
Your own body.
And that's why, and in the libertarians, the one part I do agree with libertarians on, but it doesn't have any effect in this election.
Yeah.
Is they're typically anti-war when it comes to foreign policy.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I don't mind that so much.
I thought they would be pro-war because then if there's 100% war, there'd be another war to compete with that war. Then it'd be rival wars on who's the warriest of wars.
Some of them are, and then they're not checked by by other libertarians. I don't know. I'll just say this: I think libertarianism is way too wacky and strange, and the idea that the free market will correct everything has been disproven time and time again. And I hate to say this in case you have any libertarian listeners, that I think it's stupid.
Well,
but okay. I'll say this. I'll say something nice about the libertarians, and I'm going to reference that Six Nations questions thing that we did. The libertarian guy talked a lot about solving the First Nations land claims issues, because principally libertarians are about private property rights kind of a thing. Like that's like a big thing about libertarians is property rights. So they're thinking, well, the First Nations, the First Nations like need to have their land and that kind of stuff. I don't think they know all the issues surrounding that, but like I at least say like, well, that seems kind of pro-native, so I don't want to throw them all under the bus.
Yeah.
But it's
So that's basically libertarians.
That's libertarians. And then the Freedom Party is the next one. And they're basically the libertarians, but more atheist and neckbeardy. Well, it's like I don't want to call down the like, I don't want to smear the Freedom Party. Let me say that.
Yeah.
What was that?
I don't know. You told me.
Was it me?
I was sitting there going like,
Okay, let me just say this about the Freedom Party.
Go ahead, Doug. Yeah.
So the Freedom Party has, I was looking at their platform, and they have nothing in there with First Nations people. Neither did the Libertarian,
Sorry.
and neither did the Libertarian Party either, to be fair. But I at least have that guy's response to the Six Nations questions.
Yep.
I at least have that to go on. The Freedom Party, I don't really have anything to go on anything that they feel as it pertains to First Nations issues. But they do have a lot of dog whistling on their website. Like repeating the same nonsense that like right-wing YouTubers kind of say. And that kind of makes me go, well, they can't be that good on First Nations issues if they're kind of repeating the same stuff here. So, the Freedom Party is whatever. If you have an undeniable belief in the free market, just vote for the Libertarians, I guess. But that's pretty much all. I'll say this. This is all I know about the Freedom Party. I think one of the Gretzkys always ran as a Freedom Party too. They used to have a Gretzky that ran.
But
in
like,
West
isn't
all
there
the
like a
time.
million Gretzkys?
Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't. Who knows?
Like, I don't know.
It's a big deal in southwestern Ontario. There's tons of Gretzkys all over the place.
I mean, it sounds kind of bad. Tons of those. But I'm just saying. Like, I'm just like, there's a lot of them.
Okay, then now let's talk about the.
What's the next one? What are we?
Next one is the None of the above party.
None of the above.
Yeah, let's go to the none of the above party. So, from my understanding of the none of the above party is that they're a centrist party. Like they're like right down the middle. They're sometimes left. They're sometimes right. You know, they have to be the compromised people, the ones that are kind of in the thick of things, the middle of things. But the main part of the none of the above party is electoral reform. Like they want direct democracy, which is the concept of you know, people have an issue that they want to put to a vote. You gather up enough signatures, and then they hold a referendum on it, and everyone's allowed to vote on it.
Yep.
There's more to it than that, but that's essentially what direct democracy is. And they want to do stuff like implement laws where you can recall your MP if you don't think they're doing their job, or you know, put them to a second election if they're not doing their job, or what's another one? They want to abolish parties. I think that's the big thing. They want to abolish parties so you have to vote for people rather than parties. So there's no more political parties. I think, in case you have like the one none of the above supporter who happens to listen to this, and they're like, "That's wrong, you idiot!" But
We'll punch you.
the one person in Ontario that's a none of the above voter. But
Love this podcast. I don't like it anymore.
so, the none of the above people, what's with but anyways, I want to reference that Two Row Times article that had a guy on there from none of the above, and it just really shows how useless centrism is. The political theory, the political ideology of centrism, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because it's like they asked him like, what are the most pressing issues facing First Nations people? He's like, oh, I don't know anything, except they talk about land a lot. I would talk to them, but we wouldn't talk about land at all. And then and then there's another line in there where he says, what does he say? The TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where they're like, this is which of the 94 recommendations would you make absolutely certain that you implement in your during your time in government? And he's like, oh, I'm a middle of the road centrist, so I'd only do half just to be fair.
What?
So centrism is stupid. I just like
Everyone's only gonna get half a hot dog at this barbecue.
I see that, but I see that a lot on the internet. People who claim to be centrist and they think that they're sometimes intellectually superior by being above the fray of the arguments, you know, like. But it really isn't. You know, they just look like goofs who don't pick a side.
Yeah.
And usually in politics there is a side. You know, that's just the reality. You know, like even not picking a side is being complicit in, you know, like if you try to say, well, I'm not picking a side on the climate change one, then you're helping the climate change deniers because you're literally not doing anything.
True.
You know, that's why I just say that. I hate to say that, but that's just when it comes to politics, that's just a reality. And I think that's all. There's a few other parties like the
Who do we miss? Anybody?
we missed the Consensus Party.
Are they important?
Well,
shouldn't say that.
there's one running in our riding.
Eh,
I think it's. Did I say Consensus? It might just be Census, the Census Party.
okay.
And I don't want to just ride them off as well. They're just none of the above with a nicer name, but I think it might be okay. Like okay, don't quote me on this. I don't know much about the Census Party, but that's the one time I did check them out. Is I think they do want to do like a lot of electoral reform stuff.
Yeah.
Like none of the above party does, but I don't know if they're about abolishing parties.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure, but just I guess there's a split in the parties.
Split.
Yeah, like
Like a
I
banana
just
split?
yeah, I don't know. Another is there's only like 20 of them running anyway. They can't form government. And then the other one is Trillium Party, and they're just basically the Reform Party with a different name. And that was the super right wing party in the 90s, Reform.
Yep.
right down to them wanting to advocate for direct democracy.
Okay.
So, that's
So we kind of listed the parties on.
yeah, like so those are all the parties running, and
So everyone gets kind of a general idea, because
Yeah.
that was the whole point of this, just kind of get a general idea of what the parties are and talk about all the stuff.
there's at least probably another dozen more that just have like 2 people running, 3 people. I didn't even bother with those ones.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, not really in it. Well, I'll just put it this way: GetRready isn't specifically partnering with any party. Like, I'm not specifically saying this. GetRready is like I'm an NDP, I'm a liberal, but nothing like that. I just wanted.
Didn't
to
you say that you were though in a previous podcast?
I don't know if I did. Somebody email me. I'm just trying to say it. I just want to keep this clear that this was just to get people a general idea of all these different things. Now, although this is from Snow's point of view, he still is keeping very.
I keep track of a lot of this stuff. I just want to let people know. So there might be a libertarian or a trillion person that disagrees with me. The fact is, I looked up your platform. You had nothing about First Nations people. So what do you want me to say? But yeah, so I don't know. We'll figure it out.
All I know is that's. So like I said, we went over all the parties. We talked about them. This is just generally to give some people who are not really into politics, not really understand it, or not really know how to understand the parties, or if you're just like myself, I'm typically more leaning towards what are they going to do for Indigenous people, because those are my people, and I want to know, because we're never getting a fair shake anymore. So that's why I'm kind of more. That's why when I think about politics in these parties, I think, well, what are you going to do with my people? I don't really care, how they're going to save the oil companies or any of that nonsense. Like, I don't care about that stuff. Don't talk to me about that stuff. Like, tell me what you're going to do about people, like
the
people on the ground.
The people listening, I mean, you've had Indigenous people on your podcast before talking about Indigenous issues. They should come to expect that, like, what, are we going to support Doug Ford? They should expect that we aren't going, like, we're going to support whatever group has the best First Nations platform if we're going to vote. And I just, and to me, it's pretty obvious of all the parties we listed, which one has the most robust First Nations platform, just being honest here.
Yeah, so like I said, if that's what you're looking for, but when and if they do get in, you always have to remember
To hold them account, yeah.
you're their boss, and that's
Exactly.
how it works. Is you tell them, why aren't you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Because that's, like I said, that's in the end, whether they want to look at it in a way, just because they make maybe a better paycheck than you, it doesn't mean that they are your boss.
Yeah, they're not above you.
No.
That's the thing that people forget, is that and I think that kind of goes with this kind of celebrity culture of that the Western
That we're stuck in.
Western countries have, is there's this real diehard celebrity culture. So it's like our politicians, because we see them on TV a lot. It's like, oh my God,
Oh my
look at his socks. Look at his nice hair, Whereas it's not about any of that stuff. Like, it's about policy measures. It's about them crafting policy and laws that directly affect you, and it should be up to you to hold them to account. Essentially,
Exactly.
And if they don't give you the time of day, then don't bother voting for them next time. Don't vote at all, or vote for one of these other parties.
Yeah, we need that freedom party.
I was thinking, like, we got to be fair to everybody. Get none of the above and do everything in halves.
So is that all we have for now then?
Yeah, that's all we have.
Okay, so this basically just sums up all the parties. So please go out June 7th and go out and vote. Make your voice heard. Whether you think it does anything or not, it really does. It makes a difference by actually going out.
It makes more of a difference because, well, I don't know what more. Because it's a provincial party. Because it's a provincial election I'm in, right?
Because whoever you vote in is going to affect your area that you live in. And just because you live in a country, that doesn't mean you're safe. There's somebody out there that controls that area as well. So, like, you just have to remember that. Whoever, you have to go out and go vote. And if you don't know,
no one is an island.
No.
That's the thing.
And if you don't know, go to the website, whatever that is.
Yeah, in the words of LeVar Burton, don't take our word for it. go to their platform, their party, and look up their platform themselves, and then make your own judgment.
Yeah.
Do your own investigating. That's just the reality.
Yeah, exactly. The exact out of this.
Also, so is that everything?
I think that's everything.
Well, I think this is pretty fun. I think we should do this. I'm gonna say this around your podcast. We should do this again in for the London election
Oh snap!
at November.
In November to remember.
Yeah, the city
November
council.
rain.
That would be kind of
Yeah,
funny.
we could try and talk to the mayors then.
Yeah, talk to the mayors. See if they ghost us like that other part, like that certain.
Yeah, that nobody
Yeah,
party.
that nobody party.
Those 4 people and that's it.
Come on, guys.
No one's covering us. It's like, well, we'll give you. Hey, fuck off. And I was just feeling like, I'm so hungry. Nobody loves me. Here's a cheeseburger. Shut my face. So, yeah. So like I said, go out, go vote, find out where your stations are, do everything you can, get out there, do it.
Should we promise people what the next episode's gonna be about, or should we just surprise them?
I don't know when that one's gonna come up, so but it will. Might be double duty. It's coming out soon.
Yeah. So I might return. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see if that's the case.
We'll see what comes up, but there's more exciting things coming up. So I hope everyone had fun with this one. My name's Guy Anton.
My name's Snell. Hey, Anton.
And this was the Get Ready Podcast, and we'll see everybody next time.
Great episode, as usual. Now, with that being over with, I hope everyone had a great time with the podcast and this episode. And it was great as usual. Always fun having on one of my brothers. First time, I must say. So, and of course, this, just in case anyone wants to know, this podcast was sponsored by Get Ready Catering. Get Ready Catering is a catering company that I started, and right now we are catering several events around the London, Ontario area, and that also leads into the reservations. And we specialize in traditional food, venison, wild rice, fiddleheads, you name it. We go into all the stuff that you want. You want authentic foods that come out, but we kind of modernize it with a twist on the catering. Then you call us. Get Ready. We have all the ideas that you can do. We can work with you, especially closed events, whether that be wedding rehearsals, dinner parties. You do whatever you want, even a private gig with a couple people, whatever you want. You come talk to me, and I'll help work with you. All right, so I hope everyone loves that. Now, without further ado, in the episode, of course, I did mention that if you wanted to send an email to me about any of the stuff of this episode, past episodes, or if you wanted to be on the podcast, all you had to do was contact me at getready@gmail.com. Get ready with 2 R's at gmail.com. And whether you want to talk about what we talked about, you want to send in a question that you want to be answered on the show, or you want to be on the show, all you got to do is send me that email. And we can get ready. And also, too, for the catering, or to get in contact with me about any of this stuff, you could either send me a text or a call at 226-998-7787. That's 226-998-7787. And I will gladly get back to you if I miss your call, but I will get back to you. That is the point of it. So, like I said, I hope everyone had a good time. Don't forget to rate and leave a review on the iTunes, so that way it can get out to more people and it can get out to at all times. Or you can find this podcast on SoundCloud, is where I host a lot of this stuff. But it's also on iTunes for the Apple users as well. Subscribe, rate, review, do all that great stuff, and leave it all down for me. All right, so I hope everyone had a great time. Hope everyone had a happy time listening to this one. Expecting more episodes. So, and I'll see everybody next time. Love yous.